All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It looks like we have 24 people right now. We'll give folks a minute to join, but my name's Rachel Wooten. I'm a public affairs specialist here for the Bureau of Land Management in Moab. We're so grateful that you joined us today, and we'll get started in just a minute. All right. We are still waiting a minute until we hit 5 o'clock, but thank you all for joining promptly, being here. So far, we have 38 attendees. So we're looking forward to speaking to each of you tonight. Before we get started with the official presentation, I will share some logistics with you all. So currently your microphone is off, your camera is off as well. So don't worry about that. We will have an opportunity for you to type questions into the Q&A, which you're welcome to do even starting now. That we'll get to at the end of the presentation. But the meeting is being recorded, and we're going to post the link on the e-planning site for this project after the meeting. But please use the look for that link. But thanks for joining live. And please use the Q&A portal at the bottom of your screen if you have questions or technical difficulties that come up during today's event. Okay, I'm going to introduce our panel. We have about 50 folks on the line as attendees, and I'll introduce our panelists. Panelists, go ahead and turn on your video so we can do a quick introduction for folks. Hi, everyone. And so we have our team here. My name is Rachel Wooten. I'm a public affairs specialist here with the Bureau of Land Management in Moab. We have Katie Stevens, recreation planner here for the Moab Field Office. Jill Stevenson, planner for the Moab Field Office. And we have Ty Morgan, who's off camera, but from our state office, helping out with some tech. Thanks for joining, Ty. And we also have Dave Powles, our acting field manager for the BLM in Moab. Thank you all for being here. And I'll turn it over today to Dave to begin, but we're here today talking about the Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan and draft environmental assessment. So take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm Dave Powles. I'm the acting field manager for the Moab Field Office. The Moab Field Office is about 1.8 million acres in Grand and northern San Juan County here in Utah. Today we're talking about the Labyrinth Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan, which is about 304,000 acres. And we appreciate that everyone's joining us, and there's been a lot of input, and we appreciate all the comments and information that we're receiving from you. The agenda for today was first, we're going to do a project overview for about 5 minutes, and then we'll have a brief summary of alternatives, and then we'll brief you on how the public can participate in the public comment period. And then we're going to take some questions, and then we'll repeat the presentation. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation, and if you have questions that come up during the presentation, please type them into the chat. And comments can be submitted through the e-planning website or via email. All right, Katie, do you want to take on this next part?
Okay, so the Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan area is shown in relationship to the state of Utah there, but it comprises the Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges Special Recreation Management Area in its entirety. It is about 303,994 acres of BLM managed land. And right now, the roads are designated in it. They were designated as part of the 2008 RMP, and there are 1,128 miles of road in this travel management area right now today, designated road. Next. This shows you the designated roads within the TMA. And just for a little orientation, that purple to the right is Arches National Park. Moab is very close to the east of that. It is basically the land north of the Colorado River, east of the Green River, and heads almost all the way up to I-70 along. It's not the exact boundary, but it's kind of the big power line if you've been out there. So that's the 303,000 acres that is the TMA. It also includes 1,800 acres of an open area called Whitewash Open Area. We don't designate roads in the open area, so things that are in the open area are just open and stay open. Next. Okay, the idea of a travel management plan, and we do have one for the Moab office in its entirety. It was part of the 2008 RMP, so the travel management plan was promulgated in 2008, and for the whole office. And what we're doing this time around is just taking a portion of the Moab field office and going ahead and taking a look at the designated roads within it, which should stay designated, which should be altered. A travel management plan does provide for the long-term operation, monitoring, and maintenance of a network. And we do look at it as a network of how do people get somewhere by a motorized vehicle. It will, in this 303,000 acres, replace the route designations from 2008. And there are 4 alternatives, in other words, 4 travel networks, which I know is a bit overwhelming sometimes, but what the travel plan EA does is analyze all 4 alternatives and analyzes the potential impacts on the natural and human environment of those 4 alternatives. So to skip ahead a little bit, alternative A is no action. That's from the 2008 RMP. And then we have 3 what we call action alternatives. So it includes all motorized routes and trails. It does not address non-motorized transportation. And in BLM parlance, OHV means all motorized vehicles, full-size UTVs, ATVs, motorcycles, e-bikes, even your family car. That's what an OHV is in BLM speak. Next. So why are we doing this? I know we've gotten some questions. So the purpose of revisiting the route designations in this area is to ensure that the routes designated in 2008 are sound and continue to meet the goals and objectives of the research values, and whether the routes still have a purpose and need. And we already did one of these for the Canyon Rims area in San Juan County. And we did find some roads out there that they were designated in 2008 and apparently hadn't been used since. So they really didn't have a purpose and need anymore. I'm not saying any in this area do fit that bill, but it's just a relook at each and every road. And we do need to come in compliance with the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance et al. Versus the Department of Interior lawsuit. So a settlement was made on that lawsuit, and the settlement required not just Moab, but each of several offices in the Utah BLM to undergo travel planning in various areas. And then we're also making sure that we are compliant with the OHV regulations at 43 CFR 8432.1. Okay. So the route inventory, we're starting with the 2008 travel plan network And that has about, 1,128 miles of road. And those roads were verified in route report meetings using either field knowledge or aerial imagery or interdisciplinary team input, like the range guy would say, yeah, I've been on that road. And so they were verified at the route report, at the route meetings and the route evaluation meetings. And they were composed, the people at those meetings were composed of the BLM interdisciplinary team, as well as representatives of SITLA, the state of Utah, and Grand County. And a route report was prepared for each of those segments. And all of those route reports are on ePlanning, so you can look at them. They're really a big file, so just be forewarned. But they evaluate for each route the whether the resources are present, what resource conflicts this route might pose. And they also say in which of the 3 action alternatives is that route open, in which is it closed, in which is it limited in some way. They're all open in A. So we look at what we've decided in each of the 3, what we call action alternatives. So basically it's a balance by alternative of weighing the purpose and need, or the reason for that route, against the resource issues or conflicts that route might pose. And so as a result of those route evaluations, each route was assigned to open, closed, or limited in each of the 3 action alternatives. Okay. Now, this is a quick summary. This is a quick summary of the alternatives. And let me explain what limited means first. So the orange routes are limited, and they can be limited by the size of the vehicle. And the best example around here is a motorcycle route. I can't drive my SUV on the motorcycle routes. They're limited by the size of the vehicle. So when you see the routes in orange, it means that they're limited in some way. And alternative A only had limitation by size. So when we see that 1,057 miles of route are open in A, and an additional 71 miles are open with some sort of limitation, in alternative A, all those limitations are by the size of the vehicle. So that gives us our 1,128 miles of route. Now, in alternative B, the new alternatives, the action alternatives, that shows you the breakdown. So alternative B has 84 miles that are limited. Some are limited seasonally as well. So in this effort, we also looked at seasonal limitations. So we have limitations by size as well as by seasonality. And in alternative B, 606 miles are open with no conditions, you might say. I mean, the condition is stay on the road, and 84 miles are open with some sort of limitation. 437 miles of the 1,128 are closed in B. And similarly with C and D, it shows you what is open, what is limited in some fashion, and what mileage is closed. So there's no mileage closed in A, and there's 52 miles closed in D, and C has 167 miles closed and B has 437. Next. Okay, so alternative A, and I've referred to this a little bit as I've gone along, but what is alternative A? It is no action. It's the current management. It's what's going on now. It does reflect the total network of routes evaluated in the TME. Were alternative A to be chosen, the route designations would remain unchanged. And it's kind of a baseline for a comparison between the alternatives. And there's the breakdown of the mileage. And of those 1,128 miles, 65 are limited in some way. And of those 63, 5 are limited to e-bikes. And for those of you who know Moab, that mileage is actually the paved bike path along Highway 191. Next. And there's a map of alternative A that shows the route network as we have it today. That route network came from the work done in the 2008 RNP. Okay, alternative B, I'm sure people have noticed, is the one that puts the most emphasis on natural resources. Remember, I talked about that balance between a purpose and need for the route and any conflicts it might have. This alternative prioritizes protection of wildlife habitat, natural and cultural resources, ecosystems, and landscapes. So it is, some people call it the conservation, but we're calling it the natural resource emphasis alternative. It leaves 606 miles open to OHV, 84 limited, and 75 of which are by vehicle size, 5 of which are to e-bikes, and the remaining 4 are probably closed seasonally. It closes 437 miles of OHV to OHV use. Of those 437 miles, 52 remain open to administrative use. And what that means is if it goes to a compressor station, or if it goes to a power line, or if it goes to a stock tank, the person who has the permit for that is allowed to access that facility. And it would close redundant route segments, and truthfully, it does close some of the Jeep Safari routes due to resource concerns. That is alternative B. Next. There's your map with the red shown as closed, the orange is the seasonal restriction, the blue is open to full size, the yellow and the zebra stripes are open to smaller vehicles. Okay. All right, alternative C, we're calling it the multiple use emphasis. It represents a balanced approach. It accommodates natural and cultural resources, but designates quite a few more miles of route than alternative B. 838 remain open, 121 are limited in some way. And there's the breakdown of the limitations. It closes 167 miles of the 1,128, of which 25 remain open for administrative use. An alternative C map is shown there. And of course, these are available on e-planning and in the EA and everything. And now the PowerPoint's up, so you can even look at them there. Okay, alternative D does emphasize access. It allows for most OHV-based access. It closes only 52 miles of road. It accommodates a full range of uses while mitigating travel-related impacts. You notice the other one said more like balancing, and this, it mitigates some, but it is definitely access-oriented. It leaves open 974 miles of our 1,128 and leaves another 100 open, limited in some way, closes 52. And there's the map of alternative D. So I know when people are making comments, like it is, you've got 4 alternatives to look at. And Jill will tell us how we can participate.
Hi, I'm Jill Stevenson. I'll introduce myself again. I'm the planner for the Moab Field Office, and I am going to talk a little bit about how to participate on the Labyrinth Rooms Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan. So right now we are halfway through the public comment period. The public comment period ends on Friday, October 7th, and it will close at midnight. So you have the full day on Friday, October 7th to get your comments in. We are accepting comments via mail, and the mailing address for the Moab Field Office is up on the screen. It is also available on the e-planning website and is available in the press release that some of you may have received. We are also receiving comments via e-planning. So we have 2 links shown on this screen that will get you to the e-planning site. The first one will get you directly to the Labyrinth Rooms Gemini Bridges Travel Management Plan site. And the second one will get you to the e-planning homepage. And if you use that link, you can just type in Labyrinth Rooms Gemini Bridges in the search bar, and then it will come up with that project and you can click on it. So if you click on the first link, Or if you search the Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges and click on that project, it will take you to the project's homepage. And that's what you see on the screen right here. A few things about this page. There are some buttons off to the left, which have documents, maps, map data, and the Participate Now button. If you click on the Participate Now button, that is where you will be able to submit your comments. The information in the middle of the screen is about the project, and the what's new kind of towards the bottom of the screen is where we will post up-to-date comments about the project. So we've posted a few in the last couple days, and if anything new changes or new information arises on this project, that's where you can find that information. And then there is a map up on the right-hand corner and contact information if you have any questions down in the right-hand corner. So if you're on this page and you want to participate in this public comment period, you can click on the green Participate Now button. And it will take you to this screen. It shows you the Labyrinth Bridges or Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges draft EA, and then a Participate Now button. So if you click on that green Participate Now off on the right-hand side of the screen, it will take you to a page where you can write your comment. So I just wrote example where you would type your comment. And then if you have a PDF or a JPEG or another file that you would like to share to provide with your comment, you can drag that into the upload files, or where it says drag and drop. And then down at the bottom under submitters, you can submit your first and last name. And when you filled all of that out, down in the right-hand corner of the screen, you can click preview. And this will be the preview page. So it gives you a little summary of your comment and your contact information. If you need to go back, you can click the edit button down in the right-hand corner of the screen. You can also cancel your comment, or if you are happy with your comment at this point, you can click submit. And then the next screen will be your receipt. And so you'll receive a submission ID. You can download your comment as a PDF, and then this will also show you your submitter information and your comment. When you're done with this screen, you can click close and it will take you back to the home page. So a few more things about the home page. Off on the left-hand part of the screen, under home, it shows documents, maps, and map data. This is where additional information on the travel management plan can be found. So under documents, this is where we have a copy of the draft EA, the baseline reports for lands with wilderness characteristics, the scoping report from the scoping period that was held back in March of 2021. We have a zip file of the maps. This is where you can download the route reports, which Katie was talking about, and the news release that was sent out at the beginning of this public comment period. Under maps, this is where you can find the PDFs of each of the 4 alternatives. And then down at the bottom is an interactive map. The interactive map does not have the information of each of the alternatives, but you can scroll in and out and see information on the specific roads, like the route number and the length of the road. And then in the map data, that is where you can download the shapefile. So this is a geodatabase file, and it has all of the shapefile information for the routes that we are analyzing. So when you are participating, we ask that you submit substantive, or in other words, helpful comments to the BLM. These comments are specific to the project, so specific to the travel management plan, present new information, present reasonable alternatives. So some examples of reasonable alternatives would be a comment could say, close roads M, O, and Y in alternative C to prevent user conflicts between recreationists and wildlife. Another example would be, keep road L open to provide motorists access to a favorite overlook of Z Canyon. Another helpful comment would be to question the accuracy of the information in the travel management plan. So an example would be asking, did the BLM use the most up-to-date data on endangered wildlife species in its analysis? And last, a helpful comment could be questioning the adequacy of methodology for or assumptions used in analysis. An example for this one would be a comment that would question the assumption that road J has no function, and the comment could further provide information on the function of road J, such as an access to an overlook. So those are a few examples of substantive comments that the BLM would receive during a public comment period. And Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I forgot to unmute myself. Thanks, Jill, and thanks to our other panelists. And we really appreciate you all listening to the presentation today. We hope it's been helpful, and we look forward to receiving those comments from you. Before we go further, I am going to read a couple of links off, some information off for our phone attendees or the people who might not be able to see the screen today. So first thing I'm going to read off is our link to the e-planning website. And actually, Jill, do you want to go back to the slide that has our office address and also the e-planning website so folks can read along? But I will start reading that link. So the link to e-planning is https://go.usa.gov/x/s57. And for folks that can't see the screen, the mailing address for our office is BLM Moab Field Office. Please use attention Labyrinth Rims Gemini Bridges Travel Management with the address 82 East Dogwood Avenue, Moab, Utah, with the zip code of 84532. Okay, thanks, Jill. We can go back to our question and answer slide. And before we get started, I will just, thank you all again for being here. We look forward to seeing your questions. We already have quite a few in the Q&A. We also had a lot of folks who shared questions in advance of the meeting when you registered. So we appreciate those too, and we'll get started with some of those. I'll just remind folks that we're not accepting comments in the Q&A today. So please make sure to submit your comments in writing, either through the mail or through e-planning, as we've mentioned earlier. And also, please keep your questions respectful. We certainly want everyone to feel safe to answer and ask questions today. So please be respectful of other people who are listening in, but also our presenters here today. And I'm excited that we've had so many folks join. So you can see this, but we have 93 folks currently joining us today. So that's a lot of folks. For our call-in listeners, you can press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. We'll be accepting written questions from folks joining today, but for our call-in users, if you have a question, you may press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And okay, so we'll go to our first question. So our first question is from Ryan P. And we've had a couple variations of this question. So the question is, I'm a frequent visitor. Why would you shut down popular usable trails in the system? You still have a lot of natural untouched land. And I'm first going to turn this one over to Dave, our acting field manager, and then we can go to Katie if additional follow-up is needed. So Dave, please turn on your camera and help address the question.
Yeah, well, there's a range of alternatives that were analyzed, and we analyzed potential impacts in the travel management area to natural and human environment. It is focused on issues raised during the scoping periods. And so the final network that we choose may be developed from a range of alternatives considered, and also include modifications of an alternative or combination of alternatives.
Thank you. Katie, is there anything you wanted to add to that one?
Now, I would like to emphasize what Dave said, though, that, I mean, it's not pick B, pick C, pick D, pick A. Any combination, any road, since they're all open in A, could be chosen to stay designated. And any road that's closed in one alternative could be chosen to be closed. So it's a mix and match. They're just put in A, B, C, and D for purposes of comparison. But any one particular road is not tied to its alternative.
Right. And so when we're thinking about substantive comments, the comments that just say, I would select alternative A, B, or C, or D, those ones just don't provide as much information as the ones that share more specifics. Is that what you all are saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. We have had, I'll go on to our next question. This one is from Griffin S. The question about will the BLM be extending the comment period? And I'm going to take this one. So as you all know, as we've covered already, the comment period currently closes October 7th. So that's when it'll close at midnight. And if an extension were to be granted, the BLM would inform the public on both our social media as well as on the e-planning website. And many of you may have found us on social media, but so you might already have it, but we do have a Facebook page for our local office where we post information. I went ahead and put that in the chat. You're welcome to follow us there if you want updates, but we try to post relevant updates there. Okay, our next question is from Angelo C. And how do we vote on the proposed options here? And Jill, we already covered this a little bit, but I'm gonna throw this one to you and see if you can kind of help talk us through it.
Absolutely. So while this public comment period is not a vote per se, we do appreciate your comments on the draft travel management plan. And your comments will help inform the decision-making process. The BLM will respond to substantive comments and make adjustments to the routes and in the EA where applicable. And while this isn't an opportunity to vote, as I said, you do have the opportunity to meaningfully influence the decision through your comments.
Great, thank you. The next question we're going to go to is from, we got this question from a few folks. So it's from Marcus H, Benjamin C, and Mark M, all asked a variation of why are you can even consider closing down these roads and these trails when the public doesn't support it? And I'll repeat that. Why is the BLM even considering closing down trails when the public doesn't support it? And Dave, can you help with this one?
Yeah, it was a range of options that were developed during the interdisciplinary team, and we had some of our partners that participated in that, including Grand County Roads, State Institutional Trust Lands, and PLIPCO from the governor's office. And so there's a range of alternatives that were developed, and the reasoning behind the consideration differs, but for some reasons they're considered closures due to impacts on wildlife or cultural resources, sensitive plants, and other users. The BLM's multiple use sustained yield requires us to balance that and protect resources based on this. And this is, it's part of what makes Moab a recreational hotspot.
Thanks, Dave. And we had a question from Brian M. About would limiting access to roads concentrate traffic and actually harm the environment in those areas? Katie, can you answer this one? And Katie, we're not currently hearing you if you want to unmute, but the question is, would limiting access to roads concentrate traffic and actually be more harmful for the environment? Okay, well, Katie, if you rejoin, feel free to unmute and we'll keep going through. our next question,
No, I managed, sorry.
very
The
good.
mouse was acting up on me. Could you please repeat the question?
Yes. So would limiting, access
Oh, yes.
to some roads concentrate traffic and actually be harder on the environment?
Well, that is a possibility, and that is the type of thing that I'm glad that a commenter would bring up. Many of the roads that are proposed for closure are not very heavily used. And if they're not very heavily used, it's not going to disperse traffic too much. There are a few maybe specific roads that are proposed for closure that are heavily used, and that's the type of specific comment that would be very helpful.
Great, thank you. And don't go away, Katie, because the next question is also for you and other, our other panelists. You're welcome to chime in on these too. But the next question is, can you consider seasonal restrictions instead of closing trails down permanently?
A very good point, and yes, we can. So if the road is closed, the road's going to be, let's say, closed or open, but a middle ground of a limitation, a seasonal limitation or some other limitation would, if it solves the resource conflict, that would be an excellent thing to suggest. And it is within the range of alternatives to limit a road that is closed in one alternative and opened in another.
Thank you. And our next one is also for you, Katie. And someone, John VW, shared that he's a Utah and he uses nature to heal. What will the alternative routes? What are the alternative routes that will replace the potential closures?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, even in the most restrictive alternative, which is alternative B, 690 miles of route in this 303,000 acre area do remain open. So, and the C and D alternatives obviously close less. So I guess they'd be, if a route that you utilize for that purpose is closed, I guess the alternatives are the other alternatives that are kept open in the travel plan. In the travel plan that's ultimately picked. We keep talking about travel plan, and at this point we have 4. And so we have 4 travel plans on the table. So, but the ultimately chosen travel plan there will still be roads left no matter what.
Great, thank you. Okay, and now I think we'll move on to some of our questions coming in live. And so we have quite a few. First, we're going to go to JD Marshall with a question about why is a trail being used lightly a reason or an excuse to close the trail? So Katie, I'm going to turn this one to you, and then Dave, since you're on too, if you have anything to add here, feel free.
Well, remember the routes, the disposition of the route in each of the 3 action alternative depends on the balance between the purpose and need for the road and the resource conflict. So let's say we had a road that was right over a peregrine nest, and we have had this in other TMPs, and it doesn't really get much use. Well, when you balance so it isn't no use or light use, it's like you balance that very seldomly used road with the resource conflict that it's posing, it makes it more likely that that road certainly would be closed in the natural resource emphasis alternative, but also maybe in the multiple use one too. So it's the balance between the purpose and need for the road, and part of that purpose and need is how often is it used. It doesn't mean that if it has to be used all the time. Whereas in the access alternative, the resource conflict bar is actually much higher, so it's likely open in that alternative. So it isn't just the number of times the road is used. It's the balance between the resource conflict and the level of use as one of the purpose and need factors.
Cool. Thanks, Katie. Dave, was there anything you wanted to add to that one?
Yeah, I think what Katie's alluding to is that it aligns with the BLM mission for balanced balanced use.
Great.
We do look at these decisions road by road, every single piece.
Great. And this is kind of, related. This one's from Jim R. And Jim says there's many people, such as the elderly, disabled, and families with children that rely on motorized access. How do you account for the impact on them if motorized vehicles are prohibited? And so, Dave, do you want to start with this one and then we'll go to Katie?
Yeah, and part of it's what we talked about before with the multiple use mission and provide opportunities for recreational enjoyment and access to public lands. And, that's part of the analysis of the environmental assessment is to look at those alternatives and to balance those, needs and responsibly manage the lands for current and future generations. We strive to provide the access across public lands and balance protecting resources.
Great, thank you. And Katie, anything to add there?
Well, I was just going to say that the impacts on for those that have read the EA yet, the impacts to motorized recreationists from the closing of roads is disclosed. And the EA discloses that closing mileage does close mileage off to people. So, but again, like I said in one of the earlier questions, it's not like any alternative closes every mile. So there are plenty of miles open in even the most, plenty's pejorative. There is mileage open under even the most restrictive alternative.
Great, thanks, Katie. Okay, so our next question, I'm going to ask Jill to respond to this one. And this one's, why is the proposed TMP EA limited to only motorized travel?
I may ask Katie to come in and help me with this one, but so this TMP is analyzing the travel network for OHVs. So travel management planning can include motorized and non-motorized, but we decided the scope of this TMP is just going to be for OHV motorized use. Katie?
Yes, and actually the settlement decided that. The settlement was on motorized use. It did not include non-motorized use. So the settlement that was alluded to earlier that kind of kickstarted all this was to alter the travel plan for motorized use and not non-motorized.
Great, thank you.
And Rachel, did you put the link to the settlement in
Yeah, so we did have a question come up about that already, about the settlement. And so folks who are interested in learning more about that, and we can actually put the link to our BLM travel management website in the chat for everyone. There's actually a direct link to the settlement agreement. So if you are wanting to look more into the settlement agreement, you're certainly welcome to do that. Great. We had a question, answered that one, and John N asks, are we as the public going to be able to see actual conflicts which they're referring to? And I think they're talking about resource conflicts, and maybe this would be a good opportunity to talk about what's in those route reports that Katie mentioned earlier. So, I know Dave, Katie, and Jill, you're both very familiar with those route reports. So Dave, do you want to share a little bit about how we use the route reports, what they are, and then we'll go to Katie and Jill if you want to chime in.
I'm sure. Yeah, the route reports contain all the different resources that we're looking at. So, wildlife, plants, habitat for wildlife, whether there's mineral interest in the area, whether there's rights of way for power lines and things like that in the area, access to those portions, where there's developed recreation sites in the area. And we can kind of go just through the interdisciplinary team checklist of resources that we've looked at, whether grazing is impacted by users, I mean, all sorts of different things. And the list is actually in the draft EA of the different resources that were evaluated during these root reports. And Katie, do you want to talk more about how each one was evaluated?
Well, and there is in the EA, if you don't want to open the whole file of each of the, I don't know how many there are, root reports, there is a sample in the EA that kind of walks you through what was discussed. So at these meetings, each road was discussed with, say, the wildlife biologist there, or, oh, you know, that's right next to a campground and maybe it creates too much noise for the campground. Or so each road was discussed for the resource conflicts that it posed, and those were captured on the route reports. And those same route reports have a disposition of that road in each of the three alternatives, the three action alternatives. So, you know, is it closed in B and open in C? Very common, you know, because again, that bar for the resource conflict was a much lower bar in B than it was in C or D. So the resource, if you're interested in a particular route, I would say, sure, look at the resource report and see what conflicts were recorded by the interdisciplinary BLM team and its cooperators.
Great. And Jill, do you want to tell people how they can look at the root reports if they're interested?
So the route reports are available on the e-planning website, and I will actually go back to the slide that shows where they are. So remember, if you go to the links that were provided in the beginning of this presentation, or if you Google e-planning and type in the Labyrinth Rim Gemini Bridges, you will get to this, this site. And under the Documents tab, there is, I think it's the fifth document down is route reports. And if you click on that, you can download it. It's a zipped file. And just a note, it is a very large file.
And while we're on the conversation of file type, we did have a question. And let me see if I can find that one. Jill, we had a question come up about what file types we can take comments in. While I look for that, I will just ask you, are there certain file types that it's better to submit comments in? Can we accept multiple file types in e-planning?
I believe e-planning will submit multiple file types. I know we've received JPEGs and PDFs. I do know in previous comment periods, we've had trouble getting different types of file types. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone is trying to submit a file on e-planning and e-planning is not taking it, you can feel free to email that file to us. While we do ask that you submit comments via e-planning, it is okay to email files that e-planning does not take to us.
And I believe it was due to mapping. I think they were GPX files and KMLs and KMZs.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Dave.
Great. Thank you. Okay. And all right, we'll go to the next question. Next question is for Katie. There are a lot of routes within state lands for which there are no route reports and which show up as blacked out dashed lines on the latest PDF. They're often next to other designated routes. Why don't we have route reports for those? And I'll go to Katie on this one.
Well, we are actually only making decisions on BLM land. And so the BLM does not make decisions for what roads the state recognizes on Sitka lands. Of course, we work with them in the field and in practicality, but I think we had pretty good road data for the full-sized roads, but I don't think they have the small vehicles, motorcycles, UTVs, trails mapped very well. So if you see a trail go to the Sitla boundary and then come out the other side, it probably does go through, but we don't have the data to map on Sitla, nor are we making any decision on any Sitla or private land. So the decision that we're making only pertains to the BLM land. I hope that answers the question. So we know there's a lot of connectivity through Sitla land. The way the pattern is with the 1 mile, of course, there's a lot of connectivity. But we sometimes don't have the data to show that on the map because we don't have the data from Sitla.
Great, thank you. On our next question, we had a couple people ask us how many people are joining online today. And as of right now, we have 94 folks on, and some folks have joined a little late. Some folks have left, but as of right now, we have 94 people and one call-in listener. So thanks you all for joining. We know you have many, many things that you're doing, and we appreciate your time and interest in this. So our next question is from Patrick M. And the question is, why is the BLM not considering alternatives that add additional routes? Can you speak to this one, Katie?
Well, the travel management area is a very large area, and we chose to start with alternative A. The no action alternative is truly no action, what we have now. I think a lot of people may not realize that travel management can change. It's not like an RMP. The travel management decisions road by road can change after the fact. So I am inviting people that once this TMP is finished and the route network is chosen, if you have specific additions that weren't considered in this go round, that you submit them and ask that we look at them after the TMP is established.
And I'd just add from what Katie just said, is that travel management is a continuous process that we go through and analyze at the BLM.
Yeah. So can you speak to a little bit more about what that means, or we can go back to Katie too, but what does that mean for?
Well, I will say that just today, a small change in travel management was posted out north of Dewey Bridge, not in the TMA. So it's not in the TMA area, but someone noticed that the road people really use to get out to 128 on the Cisco is not designated, and the one that's designated has practically trees growing in it. So obviously there was a mismatch. So we did a travel plan change, and that just got posted today, that an EA was done to change the designation of those two roads to designate the one that people are truly using. And that was done with EA and a decision record, and the GIS data on that road is changed already. So it happens all the time. It gets tweaked all the time. Travel management is constantly being examined. And we've done quite a few route changes on a case-by-case basis. And what I'm suggesting to the commenter is that once the route network is established and you see what's on there, if you have additional suggestions, that we could still change it after the fact of the travel plan.
Great. We had another question from Chris C. And Chris asked, Jeep Safari routes were called out in only one alternative. And Chris wants to know, does that mean the Jeep Safari routes are not included in the other alternatives? And let's go to Katie on this one.
Oh, no, they're all in all alternatives. What they're called out for is that only in alternative B are some of them proposed for closure. They're all wide open wide open. They're all open. They're all designated. Every Jeep Safari route is designated in alternatives A, in alternative C, and in alternative D. They're just not labeled as such. They're designated.
And when you say designated, you mean designated as open?
Yes, for all vehicles.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that one. I think this kind of relates to another question when we're talking about alternative A, the no action alternative, and I'll go to Dave on this one. But one of the folks asked, JD or JDM asks, is alternative A even a real option? So what is alternative A? And how do we use the no action alternatives? And we'll go to Dave, and then Jill and Katie, feel free to chime in on this too.
Right, the no action alternative is the alternative that is in place as we speak. And it is, it's considered as what we're comparing the other alternatives to. So it's as, as built right now and functional right now compared to what the analysis is showing in the environmental assessment.
Right. And so when we're thinking about, alternatives, alternative A, certainly is comparison to what is on the, what's available right now. But, also, I think we talked about earlier that the BLM can pick routes from different alternatives, right? So the final decision, might not be, one specific alternative, right?
Yes, and alternative A has all the currently designated routes open. So let's go all the way to alternative D that closes 52 miles of road. And maybe here's where that road by road information can really come in helpful. But maybe one of the roads closed even in D. And if it's closed in D, it's closed in B and C too. If people have additional information on that road as to why it should be open, well, we can pick that because it's open in A. So it performs that function too, as well as a function of comparison. It in effect makes or enables keeping any particular road open that's on the table is open in one alternative.
Great. We had another question come in from Wendy L about backcountry airstrips. How are backcountry airstrips handled in the travel management area? And we may have already talked about this one when we talked about vehicular travel, but Katie, can you address backcountry airstrips?
Well, we do have one backcountry airstrip designated in this TMP. It is Mineral Bottom. It is designated in all alternatives. I understand that there are 2 unverified backcountry airstrips also in this area. And when we looked at the backcountry airstrip data and we looked on Google Earth and we had our on the field knowledge, it's they might have been used once. They haven't been used in a long time. And a plane, once it lands, is an OHV. So I understand that making sure the backcountry airstrips are available is important, but we really only have one that's used with any frequency in this TMA, and it is designated in all alternatives. So if the 2 unverified backcountry airstrips, which I believe are Spring Canyon and Big Flat, they're right next to pretty main roads. If people have information that indeed these are utilized, since they're not open in any alternative, at the conclusion of the process, we want you to send us that information, and that's like a particular addition that we'd have to do after the fact. Jill, do you have anything to add to that? I know you were dealing with this as well.
No, I think that that captured it. And I am just going to say, Wendy, I am very sorry. I tried calling you back and your phone number did not work. But you captured it. Thanks, Katie.
Great. Yeah, and folks are welcome to reach out if they have other questions too. I know, and actually this relates to another question we answered via text, so I'm going to go ahead and answer it live here too. If you have questions about if you've submitted questions via email, do you need to resubmit was the question. And what I'll say, certainly, we appreciate questions via mail and in e-planning, but if you have submitted your question via email, we have those to Jill, Katie, and I have been getting those. And so, we're putting them in for our project team to answer, but please do use e-planning. That being said, you're welcome to send questions our way. We're, happy to answer those as we can. And, we really appreciate you both asking your questions here today, but also, going through the documents and asking those good questions. So this is kind of a more general question, and Dave, I'm gonna look to you, but Ariana D asks, I would like to know what constitutes a cultural resource. And I think, related to this travel management plan, if you could talk a little bit generally about what cultural resources are, and certainly our archaeologists would be, really well equipped to answer this one. But Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Aha. it depends on the age of what it is and what it would be significant to. Obviously, we have some prehistorical artifacts that are, culturally sensitive that we need to protect. Others are, we have former mining districts that have structures on them that we've protected in the past that people like to visit, where we like to provide access to. So when we want to provide access, we want to provide some sort of protection to that object. Generally, the historical ones are over 50 years old. We do consultation with the State Historical Preservation Office to see if there's concern with those objects. So really, there's a myriad of different sort of cultural things that we look at, anywhere from what we find on the ground that's indicative of human presence to obviously the historical objects.
Great, thank you. And Katie and Jill, did you have anything to add to that one?
Oh, I was just going to say, if the commenter was talking particularly about prehistoric traces, I know sometimes compared to Monticello or Mesa Verde, people think, well, what's in Moab? But as you all know, we have lots of rock art, we have lots of lithic scatter. I'm talking about the prehistoric habitation. We have lots of evidence of hunting camps. So it's a little bit more subtle maybe than a little bit to the south of us, but we have a lot of cultural, of prehistoric artifacts, traces, evidence here in the Moab Field Office as well.
Great, thanks, Katie. This one I'm gonna ask Jill to come on to answer, and this one's from Jim R. about, again, I think folks are really interested in these root reports and that root analysis. So, Jill, can you talk a little bit about the relative weighting, and specifically what's in those root reports, if there's weighting or what that process looks like when we're doing that root by root analysis? And after you kind of talk a little bit about that, I'll ask Katie to come on with some examples from our past route, some analysis that was done for previous travel management plans to kind of give folks that context.
So route reports were created for each route or section of route. And when we're talking about weighting, it's for each route, resources and uses for that route were identified. And then the interdisciplinary team, which is made up of specialists from the Moab Field Office, so rec planners, wildlife biologists, geologists, all came together and talked about the different resources that are present and what types of conflicts may be present between resources and recreation. So we'll say wildlife or recreation, or soils and wildlife, or things like that. So that's kind of the weighing that went on between the resources, and that was a group effort between the specialists while doing the route reports.
Yes, and those route reports will show you what resources are present. And to continue with the wildlife example, is it in bighorn lambing? They will also show you what uses are present, goes to an overlook, is a Jeep safari route. I mean, it gives you goes to some other function, but it does recognize the recreational experience as a use. And then it's a matter of balance. So in a route that has a very severe resource conflict, maybe it's out in both B and C. Whereas if the resource conflict is, in the opinion of that team, lesser, then maybe it's only out in B. So it's a weighting, it's a balance, and all in the goal of trying to find a travel network that works with people while balancing the needs of natural and cultural resources. So the route report, they're about 6-7 pages for each route. They kind of give you an idea of the reasoning that the ID team and and our cooperators, Grand County, Sitla, and Plipco, which is an agency of the state of Utah, went through in assigning, if you will, that route to one or more alternatives. Well, they're all in one, they're all in A. So assigning that route, was it going to be open in B, open in C, open in D, open in all, open in two, etc.
Right. And just to go a little bit beyond with the Sitla would have input if the routes access Sitla parcels or Sitla facilities. The Plipco representatives from the governor's office represented the case where the state's claiming RS 2477 rights of way over roads and trails. And Grand County Roads Department was involved in kind of defining the use of some of the roads to, for instance, overlooks and some of their facilities.
Great. And Katie, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the past examples from Canyon Rims?
Yes, so the Canyon Rims travel plan was signed last summer, the summer before this, and it's a smaller area, but the process was exactly the same. And that's the area out by Needles Overlook and Anticline Overlook. So in one instance, we had a fairly lightly used road that went out to a viewpoint of Cane Creek. And there were a couple of them. There were like 4 or 5 little, you know how the little spurs go out to the overlooks. And this wasn't the only overlook of this view. And so lo and behold, there's a peregrine nest right under that overlook. And so we chose, obviously that's a candidate for closure in B, but that's where balance comes in C. And it's like, oh, we have 3 other overlooks. Do we really need this one open that is right over a peregrine nest? And when people asked for that to be designated in the final alternative, in the final choice, in the decision, you know, we really couldn't, because that's a pretty severe resource conflict, particularly considering there are 3 other options to get out to that overlook that don't pose that resource conflict. And conversely, we also had people in Canyon Rims, one of the clubs down in Blanding, say, you know, for this route, this is the best overlook of, I think it was Trough Springs that you've got out there. And why did you close this in C? And so we looked, and it was indeed closed in C. And the purpose and need statement maybe wasn't quite as strong. We didn't realize it was quite such a good overlook. And that one did get designated because a demonstrated purpose and need for that route was demonstrated by the users, and a check on the resources showed it wasn't really right over a nest, or it wasn't, I mean, there were conflicts, but they weren't that bad. The conflict thing is a continuum, and it's a weighting of how almost every road has a conflict, but what's the weighting between designating that road or not designating it for the resources that are under consideration? So there's an example of where information gleaned during the comment period on the Canyon Rims EA did result in a different disposition for that road. But we had to stay the course on the one that was over the peregrine nest. I'm talking about in C. This is what was being done with them in alternative C.
Right. And so that's for previous already completed.
Yes, that one was signed, I think, in the summer of 2021. And so the Canyon Rims area, which is 93,000 acres, it includes Schaefer Basin. It's all in Salmon County. You can look on e-planning for that past example.
Mm-hmm.
And that travel plan was altered. I believe from no action, about 40 miles of route were closed. A lot of those routes were very, very, very lightly, if used at all. I believe some had practically trees growing in them. We realize that that is a far less popular area than the area that we are now looking at.
Thanks, Katie. That's super helpful. And I guess related to that, you talked about, it was signed specific time. We had a couple questions come in on who is the decision maker on this travel management plan. And so I'll say, in my experience, in other cases, this hasn't been signed yet, so we can't say who exactly will be the signature on that, especially because we have, Dave is here as our acting field manager. But in my experience, our travel management plans are mostly signed by the field manager for the office. Other folks, feel free to chime in. Is that your experience as well?
Yes.
Great. We had a couple questions come in asking us if we have a, either preferred alternative or what we're hoping to see. And Jill, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the process for how, what happens now, right? We have this public comment period. What happens now that gets us to a final decision?
So while the comment period is going on, and for a little while after the comment period, folks at the Moab field office will be working on parsing the comments and seeing what substantive comments are submitted and providing responses to those. Once all comments have been parsed and comments have been responded to, we will create a comment response document. In the meantime, the specialists will get back together and take all of the information that we glean from this public comment period and go through route by route, kind of what we did at the beginning of this process with the route reports, and make decisions on how that route will be, if that route will be open, closed, or opened with limited management. And so that decision process is going to weigh heavily on the comments that we hope to get from the public during this public comment period. And once those routes have been compiled and the decisions have been made on those, we will compile the rest of the documentation needed for this travel management plan.
Great, thank you. Anyone have anything else to add on that one, on that process or anything? No? Okay. Perfect. So we had a couple questions come in, even more recently, asking about extensions in particular related to data. And we want to be transparent here. We want folks to feel, we want to answer. And so here's the deal. This is a draft travel management plan. We're excited. We're happy to have it open for input and welcome your input on both the information publicly available. And we are aware that, and thanks for folks bringing that to our attention about some of the errors on those documents and working to correct those. So as of right now, the comment period closes on October 7th. And if that were to change, we will let you know, but that's the comment period deadline. So I think we've answered those questions. We have about 20 more minutes scheduled for our time today. I know we're seeing some folks drop off. So before everyone drops off, we have a lot more questions. We'll keep answering your questions, but I did want to just thank everyone for their time today. And Jill, can we go back to the slide for how people can submit comments really quick? Thanks. And, before folks, drop off, and, please stay on. We're here for another 20 minutes answering questions. But this is the e-planning website, but please do, submit your comments via e-planning. And sorry, I think the one that has the address for the office as well. That one, perfect. Okay, so feel free to submit your comments through Friday, October 7th by mail. Again, that mail information for our call-in listeners is BLM Moab Field Office, attention, Labyrinth Rims, Gemini Bridges, Travel Management. The address is 82 East Dogwood Avenue, Moab, Utah, 84532. And the e-planning link, and I'm going to go ahead and read the full link because some of our folks that have called, or some of our folks have said they're having issues with the Go USA link. So the full e-planning link, and let me pull that up for you real quick, and I'll just read it aloud and we'll put it in the chat again. But that link.
Hey, Rachel, before you read off the link, this link will work better on Google Chrome. Sometimes this link can be finicky if you're using Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge.
Ooh, good. Good to know. Thanks for pointing that out to folks. So if you do have an issue with that, please let us know. But I'm going to read the full e-planning link out just in case. And that link is not the one on the slide, but I'll put it on the chat. It's e-planning, so EPLANNING.blm.gov/e-planning. Again, it's EPLANNING-UI/project/ and then a string of numbers that is 2001224/510. And I'm going to put that link in the chat again, just so everyone has it. And Ty's put it in there too. Thanks, Ty. So Ty put it in there. She also put in a few minutes ago the link to the route reports. You're welcome to look at those as well. So, okay. And we still have plenty of time to answer some more questions. So we're going to go back in to answering questions in a minute. But as we're having more folks sign off, Dave, is there anything, do you want to share a thank you with folks or anything before they sign off, and we'll keep going on answering questions?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for participating. It makes our documents better and stronger. It shows the passion that the public has for these routes and the planning process. So thank you for participating, and we look forward to more comments. Great.
Okay. All right. We'll go back into the questions. So Chris C asked for clarification on the Jeep Safari routes. And we kind of addressed this earlier, but let's just be perfectly clear here. So Chris asked, does this mean that Jeep Safari routes are not affected in the other alternatives? And Katie, I think you answered this one. So let's talk about the Jeep Safari routes and then talk about them in each of the alternatives.
Yes, the Jeep Safari routes are designated as open in all of the alternatives except alternative B closes some of the Jeep Safari routes. And I'm not going to name them because I'll miss some of them, but they're not labeled as such in A, C, or D, but every Jeep Safari route is designated as open in all of the alternatives except for B. In other words, designated as open in A, designated as open in C, and designated as open in D.
Great. Thank you. The next question is from Nate H. And Nate asks, why are any changes necessary? What motivated this change? And Dave, do you want to take this one? I think we can talk a little bit about the settlement, perhaps.
Absolutely. There was a court-ordered settlement where we evaluated each one of the routes, and that's what's driven this. So it's been broken up into different portions in different parts of the field office. So we've completed the Canyon Rims. We're working on Labyrinth, Gemini, and I think the next one up is, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, Dolores.
That's right. It is the last one up. So the settlement, which was not just the Moab office, it included Price, Vernal, Kanab, and Richfield as well. And each of those offices, as part of the settlement, agreed to relook at the travel management plans in in the Moab case, 3 areas. I think Kanab has 2. I think Price has 3. I'm not going to name them. They're all listed in the settlement. So the 3 areas that the Moab Field Office was directed to revisit were Canyon Rims, which is finished, Labyrinth Rim, which we're in now, and our last one is the Dolores Triangle. So so why now? Yeah, truthfully, it's the settlement. Although, I mean, the travel plan is from 2008, and this is probably the most heavily traveled part of our office by OHVs. And, taking a second look is never a bad thing. And hopefully we'll end up with even a better travel plan at the end of the process.
Great. Thanks, Katie. We had, and I think I'm looking through these questions. We had a couple questions related to, what is prompting these. We had a couple questions come in about balancing access, particularly with those for disabilities. And, I think I'll kick us off and then go to Dave. But, we encourage everyone to come and enjoy public lands, regardless of your, abilities to physically move around the public lands. And I'll kick us off with that and say that, there are many opportunities for folks to explore with different abilities. And I know, our office in a few areas has been working on handicap accessible campgrounds and things like that to really improve experiences of visitors. So, I'll kick us off with that, but then also, turn to Dave. So Dave, how do we walk us through?
Yeah, it's actually one of the BLM priorities, recreation for all, and work to ensure that families and everybody can have access for opportunities to hunt, camp, fish, hike, and play on public lands. That's from the BLM priorities. And we do. We have users that use the area for restorative processes for them, healing and things like that. We have users that come with all different abilities that we try to provide opportunities for them to enjoy this area. You hit the nail on the head, I think, Rachel. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. The next question we'll go to is there an option to have access to roads via lottery or maybe use a permit? And so Katie, I'll ask you to talk a little bit about this. I think, maybe this is kind of related to when we talked about thinking about seasonal closures, but what options are open to us for road use?
Well, we do have, we have one road in our office right now, not the permit for the commercial users. We're talking about a permit for private users. And we do have one road already. It's called Coyote Run, I think, that it's in San Juan County, but it's open only by permit. That is an option. I think that, again, this might be something for after this travel plan is promulgated, that if users truly think that one road is so crowded that it needs a permit system, then we can visit that subject at a later time. We can apply permit system to any designated road at any time. I'm not saying it's instantly quick, but we have the ability to do so. So I know I've read some comments too where people said, if it's too many people on a road, let's go to a permit system. And I think that is an option for after the travel plan is done.
Great. And Katie and Dave and Jill, feel free to chime in here too. But certainly, people have the option to submit comments with specific details like that, right? If they're thinking about a road that maybe should or shouldn't, what options are available to them?
Well, it's fine to suggest something for a later time. I don't think. Let's say someone said, I think Golden Spike, to use a Jeep Safari route, should be open to permit if you have a permit. I mean, that's a comment you can make. It isn't really within the decision space of this travel plan, which is either going to say, well, I guess it could say that Golden Spike is limited to use by permittees. Then we'd have some work to do that, but I guess maybe it's a type of limitation that could be suggested.
Okay,
Just like a seasonal limitation or a limitation by vehicle length
great.
width.
Thanks, Katie. It's helpful for folks to kind of give clarity about, scope of comments that they can put in. And thanks, Karen, for your question. Craig H had a question about, how many common residents want roads to be closed. And I think I'll take a stab at this one if this is okay. But, I think the only way that we know how people feel and what specific information is if you submit comments. And so I just really want to encourage folks to submit comments to us. We've had folks come to us to, come to our office and sit down and talk to us and tell us folks are telling them specific things that we're not hearing. And so the only way that we can get the specific information that you have is if you submit comments. So, whether you're living locally here or somewhere else, that's how we hear. And we've had a lot of comments so far. I think on e-planning, folks can look there, but we have over 3,000 comments submitted on e-planning right now. And certainly, we're looking for the substantive comments, but for folks, this is a great step, I think, by attending this public meeting today, listening in, answering your questions, but please do, submit comments with specific details and share your knowledge with us, because we can't know what all the details that or your specific experience if you don't share it with us. And I don't know if anyone else wants to kind of chime in on that one. Dave, Jill, or Katie. No, okay. I guess the last thing I'll say on that one too is that we manage federal public lands. These lands are open to everyone. And also we manage them for, all Americans, so Americans across the country, but we do strive to be a good neighbor to our local communities and, our local folks in the local area too. So that's something that we try to do. Let's see, I'm going to take a minute and look through our questions. We have about 5 minutes left, so give me just a minute to look through to see. We won't be able to answer all of your questions tonight, but we do appreciate your questions and your time here. So we have a question from Bruce H. and Dave, I'm going to send this one to you. This is why is Grand County involved? And I think I'm going to take this a little bit bigger and say, who's involved and who are our stakeholders. I know you've been working in this process for a while. You've been in the office in your assistant field manager role and here as a geologist for a while. So can you talk a little bit about that and specifically, who has been involved in this process?
Yeah, and I'll ask Katie for a bit more history, but Grand County's been involved both as a collaborator and a commenter. So we've had comments from people throughout the government in Grand County, as well as Grand County Roads Department. Now, a lot of these routes are Grand County roads that we're talking about, designated as, B and D roads. And so they actually perform a lot of the maintenance on these roads. They know kind of the ins and outs. We have lots of visitor statistics that the county keeps as far as visitation goes, so that they know what the users are. We collaborate with the county in lots of other issues, such as, mining claims. Mining claims are registered with the county prior to them being submitted to the Utah State Office. We have permits with permits for recreational activities in Grand County are also permitted through the BLM, subject to being permitted and fitting those stipulations for compliance with local laws and things like that. So those are some of the issues. I'm sure I'm missing some. And if Katie, if you want to
Well, the
Yeah,
settlement
yeah.
process itself, the county is a cooperator de facto in each of the 12 travel plans. There are 12 travel plans going on around the state. For Canyon Rims, that was entirely in San Juan County. Our cooperator on that travel plan was San Juan County. This TMA is entirely within Grand County. Grand County, represented by the Grand County Commission, is the cooperator, is along with about 10 entities were invited. Like the Park Service was invited, but they didn't feel it really infected them enough to become a formal cooperator. So of the 10 parties, 10 entities that were invited, 3 chose to participate. And that meant coming to all those meetings. So, and they are, as we've said before, the SITLA, the state of Utah, 2 entities, SITLA and PLPCO, which represents the governor's office. It stands for Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office, I think, and Grand County. But Carbon County's a cooperator on the plans up in Price, and Kane County is a cooperator in the plans down in Kanab. So the county is a cooperator, just like they were in the RMP, just like they were in the MLP. That's really common to make the counties a cooperator in any big planning effort. And at the planning meeting, Dave's right, at the route evaluation meetings, the county sent 2 people. They sent one of the commissioners and they sent the chairman of the road department. So the county had 2, because the county's not a thing, the county's people, right? So 2 representatives came from Grand County, the road department chief, as well as one of the commissioners.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful. We have, I think we just have enough time for one more question. And this question came in from Jeff B, asking, will the event be recorded and will we be able to watch it online? And I thought this was a good closeout one because it's one thing I wanted to cover before we end today, which, yes, we've been recording this event and it will be linked on our e-planning website. So you'll be welcome to go there. We'll try to get that up as soon as possible. And the other things that I wanted to share before we end today are that we weren't able to get to all your questions today. And so the best way for you to have your voice heard is to submit your comments. So we encourage you, if you have additional comments that you'd like to submit as a result of looking through the documents or attending today, we strongly encourage you to do so. And we'll post the link to the e-planning website one more time in the chat. And Ty, if you could help us do that, that would be great. You can submit questions via e-planning or via mail. We encourage you to do so. And we really do thank you all so much for your time, your interest today. Dave, is there anything you want to say to kind of close us out?
Nope, just thank you. Thank you for the input, and we appreciate the comments.
Great. Okay. We'll sign off, but we do, again, appreciate all of your interest, all your time, and certainly